Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to Mumbai Angels Network's Reboot 2 Industry Edition, a series of events focused on the challenges and opportunities for specific sectors in the new normal. Before we begin, a quick request to all of you to please keep your devices on mute so you can hear the speakers clearly and participate better in the discussion. The session for today is divided into 40 minutes of panel discussion and 20 minutes of Q&A. Do send us your questions via chat. Our team will curate it and we'll try our best to get it answered by the esteemed panelists. Our sector in focus for today is digital media, which does not need any introduction. I would quickly like to acknowledge our sponsors and partners for today's session. Event partner, Ideal Insurance Brokers, taxation partner, Tax Mantra Global. Our panelists for this session are Aditi Srivastava, co-founder Pocket Access, Aditi is part of the founding team at Pocket Access, India's leading digital media entertainment company, whose mission is to solve boredom. The company operates 5 socially distributed content brands, which all of us are familiar with: Filter Copy, Dice Media, Gobble, Jambo, and Nutshell, as well as a direct-to-consumer platform, Loco. Separately, Aditi advises IntelliCap, where she has set up the IntelliCap Impact Investment Network, the world's largest angel network investing in for-profit businesses dedicated to creating positive social impact across India and East Africa. Faye D'Souza, journalist. Faye is an award-winning journalist who has changed the way news is covered on Indian television by focusing the audience's attention on the issues that matter to the citizens rather than those that fuel emotions of partisan debate. Faye's calm research style of hosting event news shows prioritizes information over opinion. Her focus on accountability of government, responsible taxation, safety of women and children, education, health, and urban development has also resulted in several policy changes. Post her exit from television, Faye has begun her entrepreneurial journey and will soon launch her own digital news platform targeted at the young urban Indian audience. Our next panelist for today is LV Krishnan, CEO, TAM Media Research. A journey of over 2 decades in the world of media insights, LV and his team pioneered a range of audience understanding information for the media industry. He is today one of the most experienced and competent professionals in the media research arena. His contribution to the growth and development of understanding data analytics for programming and marketing of media brands has significantly helped mentor the blossoming of the TV media industry in India. His vision is characterized by the belief that all harmonious research work will spark a new insight that is bound to deliver ROI for businesses. He has been a speaker at global media research forums of ESOMAR and ARF and continues to be a visiting faculty in leading B schools across the country. He is also a strategic advisor and board member in a new digital startup. Vikram Gupta, founder and managing partner at IVCAP Ventures, is our next panelist. Vikram Gupta is the founder of IVCAP Ventures and has over 22 years of experience in private equity, business consulting, M&A, strategy and operations in healthcare, life sciences, education, consumer goods, and other industries. He has held leadership positions across well-known companies in India and abroad. Prior to founding IVCAP, Mr. Gupta was a founding member at a USD 100 million healthcare-focused PE fund that he conceptualized and raised in 2008 when the world markets were going through a turmoil. The session for today will be moderated by Anubhav Sontalia, CEO, Merkle Socrates. Anubhav is a co-founder of Socrates, which became a part of Merkle Inc. in 2017. Currently, he is the CEO of Merkle Socrates, which is regarded as one of the best marketing agencies in India, managing about 10% of the country's digital media spend. With the inclusion in the DAN ecosystem, the agency is also carving a niche for itself by consulting brands in implementing the latest marketing technologies and automation solutions in the country. Before Socrates, Anubhav was the product and program manager at Amazon in Seattle, driving efficiency at a scale for Amazon's comparison shopping program. He has completed his master's from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County in computer science. I would like to thank our panelists for their time and for giving us and the audience this opportunity to learn from their experience and insights. Without taking up much more of your time, do keep your microphones on mute and send in your questions via chat. Over to you, Anubhav.
Hey guys, thank you. Thanks to Mumbai Angels team for organizing this series and for everyone who's attending it, including the panelists. Firstly, I think I want to say that I know that it is really tough to be an entrepreneur, and I think it's even more tougher to be an entrepreneur. I think in these times, it's quite crazy, and I think even for relatively larger businesses, it's a crazy time. So I can completely imagine how tough it is uh, to to be an entrepreneur and to be an entrepreneur today. I think I just wanted to say that I don't think you should think you're alone in this journey. I think if you ask for help and advice, you're going to get a lot of it. Uh, this session is one of those, but I think just reach out to anybody and you'll always get help. I think that's the one thing that I've learned. Uh, the other thing I think is that however tough this time is, as Vikram and I were discussing earlier, I think this is going to create a once in a lifetime opportunity to create some crazy innovative solutions. Because at the heart of it, customer behavior is changing. And whenever there is a fundamental shift in customer behavior, it requires newer solutions to tackle the newer customer behavior. Older solutions don't work anymore, and that's where the big opportunity lies. We've obviously seen this kind of behavior when, say, demonetization happened in India, or even the start of the internet itself. I think is exactly that kind of customer behavioral change. So I think we are going to see something very similar. So I think while I understand it might be tough, but it is also a big opportunity to look at very, very closely. Today, I think we are trying to discuss how this becomes an opportunity for, especially in the digital media space and the content space. And I think we have a bunch of panelists. I think Shalini already introduced you to him. So I'll quickly, I think, jump into questions. I think the big question, obviously, in the room, and I think maybe Aditi can give a few tidbits on about that is, how do you think this is going to change customer behavior? Like we all say that it is going to change consumer behavior and habits, but how is it going to change, especially with regards to new media consumption, digital media consumption? And then how are you seeing basically people consume media differently than they used to pre-COVID?
Sure. Thanks so much, Shalini, and thank you, Anubhav. It's really good to be here. So, it's very interesting because we've always said that our mission has been to solve boredom. And I think that could never be, that couldn't be more true, right? In these times where everybody is working from home. And of course, video chat apps like Zoom have seen, a humongous boost in consumption, but so have TikTok, so has Instagram, so has YouTube, Facebook, and various OTT apps, right? So I think one of the big shifts that we are seeing in consumption is that people are more and more also becoming creators. So we were already seeing this trend, where, for example, a camera shy culture was becoming now, a TikTok heavy, creator, right? Even in tier 2, tier 3 cities, right? And more of that is happening, and it's the demographic of creators is also moving to slightly older people as well. So younger people were anyway doing it; they're doing it more, and older audiences are doing it as well. So that's very interesting. I think Faye was talking about her dad being, being very in shock about not having a newspaper. My dad has been creating songs on Star Maker like crazy, right? So these kind of things are happening. And so I think the creator behavior and UGC content, right, is really on the rise. Secondly, I think we're seeing a lot of catalog effect of content, which means the older content that's already there, that has been successful, people are going and watching it again and again, right? They have time. The new releases are lower than normal. And so people are becoming nostalgic. They're going and binging on older content. And I think the third one, and the most important one for people like us, is that consumers are becoming more grateful and more forgiving. What I mean by that is that, so we have actually continued to create a lot of content during these times, especially short form. Also on the gaming end, we've continued pretty much at the same speed as before. On the animation end, we've sped up. right? Because we've realized that while physical productions can't happen for web series, etc., you can give people more animated content. And I think, and even the series that we are making, for example, different people shooting from home, obviously are slightly lower quality in terms of they're being shot on people's phones, etc. But audiences are saying thank you. Like in the comments, people are saying thank you so much for entertaining us during this time. How are you guys doing this? We really appreciate it. So they are forgiving. They're okay with lower production values as long as the content is authentic, and they're very grateful. And we are seeing this behavior for brands as well. So the brands that are talking to the audience at this time and showing empathy, with their consumers, those guys are getting huge ROI as well, because consumers feel that the brands are on the journey with them. So these are the three main sort of shifts.
Faye, do you want to put give us a news view of it, how people are changing behavior when it comes to news? And then I'll go to LV, I think, where I would love a analytical view on the situation, because I think he's the best person who can give us a very quant view on this problem. You're on mute, Faye.
I completely agree with everything Aditi said. I normally agree with everything she says anyway. I think she's brilliant. But she said some really important words. She said authentic. She said empathetic. She said credible. I think these are the words for everybody going forward. Whether you're a brand, you're an investor, you're a company, you're a content creator. This is what without maybe actually saying the words, this is, I believe, what audiences are looking for. They're looking for authentic people that they can connect with, brands that are being real, brands that are being close to the ground, empathetic with what people are going through, and credible. Now, credible is really the word that's most applies to the news sector at this point. There are a couple of changes. So two things are really bothering my dad, since he's already come up in the conversation. One is the inability to get a haircut, which is driving him crazy. The other is the inability to physically read his newspaper. I don't think, and I know that he's going to run and get a haircut the first chance he gets, but I don't know when was the last time, at least in the history of our media, that we've had habits broken by force in this fashion. Where people don't actually get their newspapers and they're forced to read it online if they want to. Where people are consuming content, like Aditi said, that looks different. You're forgiving the quality. You're being grateful that people are putting it out for you. This is something that I've personally noticed a lot with news. So I was on a gardening leave period with the Times Group, which prevented me from doing anything else. So I was sitting at home, stewing in perhaps disappointment with what was happening on media, the fact that I felt that there were real stories that were not being told. So I started randomly just writing out the news on Instagram, which I realized is a space where people don't normally write out the news. And there was such a sort of a reception to that, saying that, hey, this is what we like. We want people to simply just tell us what's going on, without bringing in any emotion, without bringing in. So all of the old sort of routes of handing out news that are being used right now, people seem to be a little frayed by it, a little tired by it. And they want a different approach. They want an easier approach, a lighter approach, a more credible approach, a less emotional approach, a less outragey approach. And I think that that's one thing. And, I just want to put that there. But from a business point of view, there are a couple of things that are happening. Television news per se, and large news studios with the big studios and the satellite costs and the distribution costs were already difficult to run before this happened, because they were very expensive and ad revenues were drying up in a bad market. I expect that will only get worse. And a lot of television channels will become unviable because of the kind of competition there is, because of the low quality with which they're putting out content, because they don't have the space or the time or the energy to do real work with real love. And because ad revenues, I expect, are going to dry up further. I also think that what digital can deliver at this point is actual focused, driven content that reaches specific audiences for brands. So brands will be able to say that, listen, I want to be able to reach urban women between this age and this age who are able to afford this sort of thing. And digital content will be able to deliver that, as opposed to what television does right now, which is, this is our price, all of India. Or this, we are a regional channel, but this is what, we cover everybody. And the data for television is gray. It's not really very specific. We know that it's not very, very, you're not able to cut it really clean, as opposed to digital. So I think that a lot of that spending will move towards digital. A lot of the tastemaker viewers will move towards digital. And we're seeing basically a lot of young people. If we look at the numbers, it's the boomers and the millennials who are still, the boomers are still on television, but everybody else is sort of moving off television completely. So I think that these habits, one, which is driving people from physical print into using digital, and generally a sort of lack of faith in television that's driving people to digital as well. I think that has sped up what would have happened over a course of 10 years down to 1 year. And we'll see a very different sort of landscape for media when this is done, for news media.
Thanks, Faye. Thanks. LV, any thoughts?
Okay. I think there are some points that Faye mentioned, pretty relevant. While some of them I may not completely agree with it. The key thing that's happening is the fact that within the Indian households, three key media are coexisting with each other presently. There's television, there is digital, and there is radio. Print has become digital largely, and out of home or cinema has just fallen through the roof completely in nature. So when we look at the present scenario, the COVID scenario, I think out of an average normal person's 24 hours, remove out his sleep of 8 hours or so, the remaining out of the 16 hours, 10 hours is actually getting taken care of on a gross level by the three mediums: television, digital, and radio in certain extent. In that, digital and television are dominating, with each of them on an average taking away around 4 to 4.5 hours of consumption on those two platforms completely. So when you look at the demographics, of course, as Faye rightly said, the digital is slightly skewed towards a younger age group segment, a less than 45 age group segment. And the bulk of the time is actually getting spent on video, on social networking, chats, and interestingly, gaming. That's a new platform that's emerging out very, very strongly in nature in this COVID exercise. On the other hand, if I look at television, it's still continuing to do pretty well. Although news, which went up dramatically, has started coming down in terms of the share of viewing. It almost, never in the history has news occupied more than a 20% share. It was usually less than 10% as a genre. But now, for the first time, it's even crossed 20% and competing strongly with movie genre and general entertainment genre. But it has started coming down over weeks. It's primarily led back with mythologies playing a strong role. And therefore, the belief during these times have come back to probably God among various people, which is attracting audiences to television significantly because of the content that they're putting in over there. But the interesting part is that while consumption of media has increased dramatically, the opposite has happened to the revenue part of it. Revenue has fallen down pretty badly in the month of April. Although in May, it's slightly, in the first 1 week of May, you've seen a slight jump in terms of the revenue gain. Television dipped by almost 44% in terms of volume of advertising, and almost around 65% in terms of advertising revenues in nature. Print dipped by 80%. 80% of the print has got washed out completely in April. Radio dipped by 70%. So what has gained, or what is less lost actually, has been digital. Digital fallout in April has been just 18% loss in advertising revenue. that is largely because of the fact that while there were three key large sectors, which is auto, travel, and airline, which was big in advertising in these sector in digital, went away, replaced with FMCG in a big way, edutech coming in a big way, and health services and fintech compensating for some of the losses of auto and travel completely. So while digital may not have grown from the point of view of revenues, it has not lost out as significantly as what the others have lost out. It's just an 18% dip actually, which I think in May and June, and as Faye and Aditi rightly pointed out, digital will catch up and start growing significantly in nature. What is happening are three key trends actually from a consumption of digital perspective and from an advertising in digital perspective. One is that the share of video advertising in largely had been around 20 to 22% in the last 2 years or so, and it's been growing, but around 22% or so. But that has now accentuated, and it's now almost around close to 35% of the advertising is actually happening on video. So video consumption and video advertising both are literally increased in nature from a share of advertising perspective. Second is, given the kind of lockdown situation, and I think Faye also pointed out rightly, distribution of goods are not being national in nature, scarcity of products in many parts of the country, but available in certain pockets. And therefore, pocketing and targeting advertising has become essential, and digital is playing a strong role over there. So that is enabling advertising to keep up on digital. And the most important thing over there is the new advertisers who have walked into digital. There's a host of around 2,000 new advertisers who have walked into digital just in the month of April and May, boosting up the advertising revenue in nature. And the last trend is basically, where are the advertising going actually? So there is YouTube, there is Facebook, literally on. But when you look at the tail end of advertising, which is receiving, tail end of publishers on digital, which is receiving very little advertising, that's where money is also going to it. A, because of the fact that the budgets they have is very limited in nature. And second, because those small tail end platforms in digital are talking to local audiences at pockets of the country, which is what the advertisers want to reach out to from local advertising. So you see a substantial growth happening, and which is pushing digital revenues up in these kind of periods.
Thanks, LV. I think brings me to the next question. I think LV briefly answered that question any which ways, but I'll quickly go to Vikram. I think Vikram, you were exposed, being an investor and a prolific investor, I think you're exposed to a lot of businesses, including digital media businesses. Can you give us some tidbits on what they're doing to monetize? While there is obviously a boom of consumption and users, but how are they monetizing better? We do know from LV that there's a dip in overall revenue, but still digital seems to have held its own. How are they managing this ad crash?
So I think it's interesting to hear, and I totally agree with the views of other co-panelists in terms of how the things are changing and the immediate impact, because of that. But I think we typically look at situations with a little longer term perspective, and that's the primary reason, even in this a scenario like this, we continue to look for investment opportunities because we look for a 4 to 5 year investment horizon. And I think, of course, April has been bad for everybody in the market, irrespective of which business you were in. There might have been huge demand for your business, but just because you were not able to supply, your revenues would have gone down almost to zero. Now, I think the question about how entrepreneurs in this scenario should look at the situation and how they should monetize and how they should really come back if they've really gone down. I really look at the current situation as a situation which is, correcting the mindsets or the consumer behavior in a different direction. And we are seeing, for example, a substantial shift from offline to online. and to various estimates, people are talking about, even if you look at the offline retail or the overall retail business, I think it's moving from almost 3% to even 15%, of the overall retail business to online. And to me, that's a very, very substantial jump or change. And businesses which are, really, in the top 4 or 5 positions in their respective industries in online. And I think they would tend to gain a lot. So they really have to prepare their war chest to make sure that they're able to capture that shift. So therefore, it's actually going to be like a J curve, so you'll have in the short term, a dip, then, coming back slowly, but the slope will be very different going forward. So therefore, it makes, equally important to make sure that you have enough capital with you to be able to cater to that growing demand over a period of time. Of course, the time or the time frame of this is actually something one has to think about, how long this opportunity is going to happen, or how long it's going to take for that curve to come back. And I think that really depends on lots of things. So one of the factors which is important there is, the most fundamental driver for this whole situation is the fear of this virus. And we know that, this fear is not going to go away unless you found a real kind of a solution in terms of a vaccine or a medical situation, which, lets people come out of their houses and start really working again. But even if that happens, I use this example of a fish tank theory, which is, it's an experiment that a scientist conducted. They put 2 fish in the same tank, putting a divider which was transparent. Let that happen for a year, and after a year, when he removed that, the fish didn't cross the central line. They continued to stay in their respective zones. I think that's the psychology that might play out even when the solution happens. People will probably continue to work the way they were working, and I mean, in fact, quite a substantially large number of people were working from home. In fact, many of the startups have announced recently. In fact, some of the large startups have announced, more than 60% of the workforces will continue to work from homes, permanently. And I think that is actually a very interesting shift which is happening, and which also, from the investment perspective, offers opportunities of very different kinds. So we recently announced an investment in a company called Conversite, which has developed a tool for community management. So, if you are an online community manager, managing communities of, similar interest areas, and the community manager uses this tool to really make sure that these communities are very productive. And I think tools like these would actually find a lot of value in communicating the messaging of various brands to their target customers. And even tools like these, what we are using right now, this Zoom, there are over 100 people right now on this with a very similar area of interest. I mean, you might actually see soon even tools like these being used for, sending messages, which are relevant to this audience. So I think you will see a new breed of potential, digital marketing emerging. And the other thing which I see, based on the point which Aditi mentioned, that even in tier 2, tier 3 towns, you're seeing a significant change in behavior, people using TikTok and other ways to really, communicate, their messaging and branding. And I think that's going to lead to a significant opportunity for vernacular kind of an audience, opening up a whole lot of new set of opportunities. We're talking about roughly about 600 million people who are on the internet. And we have a population of 1.3 billion. We're going to see a much faster progression towards people getting online from the ones who are remaining, who are not getting online. I think a lot of that growth is going to happen in the vernacular areas where people actually consume different languages. And I think that will offer a lot of opportunity from digital media perspective to really come up with creative ideas to position content to those specific target audiences. So, we see that all these things put together from an investment perspective as huge opportunities. In fact, in January this year, I was telling someone that by 2025, you will see unicorns which are even not born yet. And I think that's a very likely scenario. And in fact, I personally believe that, people who are really, really kind of thinking about all these opportunities very creatively and are able to capture this shift of demand, they would probably grow much faster than what they would have ever imagined. So you would definitely see unicorns emerging of very different nature.
Thanks, Vikram. I think a slightly more tactical question maybe to Aditi. I think how have you guys changed, say, your near-term focus? And like, how do you build flexibility in your business model, which was heavily ad supported? Are there alternative revenue streams that you guys are exploring, or have you explored it already in this time?
Yeah, for sure. So I think like Vikram said, cash conservation and making sure you have enough funds to have a runway of at least 12 to 15 months is really important. So what we've done is we've done actually scenario analysis quite early on, which basically helped us model how we would basically change our cost structures in the next 2 quarters. So whether it's going to be like an L-shaped recovery or a U-shaped recovery or say a V-shaped recovery, right? And according to that, how we would change our cost structures. For example, reduce marketing costs, reduce any kind of, new office expenditures. We've done a lot of work negotiating on rent, negotiating with large vendors like Facebook, Google, AWS, etc., and gotten lots of credit periods from those guys. So we've done a lot of, we've put a lot of focus on rationalizing costs. Obviously, salaries and all people are, the last thing that we want to touch. That said, we also are reallocating. So it's not like we don't want to spend at all. We are in a decently comfortable, cash position. So we've been lucky that way. And we do want to spend on growth because there are a lot of opportunities, like, all the panelists before that have said. So, what we're trying to do is gaming, animation, and smaller scale productions, right? So we are actually realigning spends on these. On larger scale productions like web series that we do either on our own channel Dice Media or on various OTTs that we work with, there we are actually trying to develop a lot more. So we are spending time writing, right? So that when the lockdown opens and large scale productions are allowed, then we can right away go and shoot. Also, what we're doing is we're seeing, so usually these larger sets have say 100 people on set. We've actually done a big cost rationalization on how can we reduce sets to say 30 people, 40 people, 50 people. So this is very interesting because, we would have never done this in a normal time. But now that we know we can do this, perhaps even when everything is normal, we will have much leaner sets, right? And much leaner operations. So I think focus on the things that can be done at this time and really doubling down on them, is the main thing that we've been doing. The other thing is also, everybody should take advantage of the low CPMs that are out there right now. I mean, CPMs are ridiculously low right now. And so whatever you put out is reaching that many more people, right? And I think that's something that we're really taking advantage of. So basically cash conservation, realigning to spending on growth. We are seeing, we talked about the ad crash earlier, but we're seeing, obviously there are some categories that are counter-cyclical, right? And they are spending. So whether it is edtech or whether it is, food delivery startups or grocery startups, etc., these guys are spending. And so we've realigned our sort of sales and brand solutions teams to only focus on those. And we are seeing very interesting behaviors there. So, I mean, even the older school companies that would never make a decision over, a call or a voice chat, that's what they're, or a, video call, that's what they're doing. So our meetings have tripled, right? So which is amazing. No one's commuting, no one's wasting time, setting up meetings like 1 month from now. Everything is in the short term. A lot of brands want to put out messaging during lockdown. And so we've really taken advantage of that. The other thing is that a new behavior, which is very advantageous from advertisers we're seeing, is that they want to talk in packages now. So usually it's always, the media guys who say, hey, let's do a package. But here the brands are saying, hey, for the next 2 quarters, this is my new budget. So what all can you give me? So they're actually telling us their budgets. Again, these things are not normal, right? So I think, as Faye said, it takes a certain amount of time to build a habit. And we think that we're nearing that time, right? It's been 6 weeks. It's going to be a few more weeks. Habits are going to change. And I think there's a few positive things that hopefully will all remain on the efficiency side, on the side of more open communication and transparency from advertisers, etc.
Cool, thanks. Since we are on that topic, and I think Vikram briefly spoke about the billion people on digital dream for India. I would love a prediction, I think, from all of you guys. By when will we hit it? Give me a month and a year, and I think we'll talk about it later. We have successfully managed to put everybody on a spot.
LV has all the data for this.
Yeah, I think the latest numbers that our parent company Nielsen released was 504 million internet users as of first quarter 2020, which I think must have grown during this quarter, April, May, June, by another around close to 7 to 8% easily. And that could put you around to close to around 550 million internet users across as of now, which means the fact that if this rate of growth continues in nature, I think by 2023, 2024, we'll be close to around a billion users actually.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, in fact, I would not say it will be a linear growth. In fact, it will be more like an exponential growth. So I wouldn't be surprised if it happens even before that.
And the interesting thing is, what is spurring the growth actually? Okay. Is it the demand for content? Is it the fact that it's offering a solution to consumers to buy products or do e-com transactions? Or is it literally the fact that the speed and the bandwidth prices have come down so low, the fact that it's making people jump into this bandwagon very literally in nature? And if you look at it, literally the amazing part of this at this point is the fact that all three are coming together. The costs are not so high. Your utility services have jumped up dramatically on digital, offering services at a very, very localized level in nature. And of course, availability of content has just perked up dramatically with not just organizations doing short and long form videos and making them available so quickly on digital, but even the regular traditional media like which is television, offering that entire menu of content available on digital at a dirt cheap price compared to the kind of price that they need to pay if I need to go on to a DTH service or a cable operator service to access the same content. So there is three big baskets that are being offered and luring customers on the digital platform, which is creating this growth. And I agree with Vikram, the fact that this growth will suddenly jump up and then flatten after some time.
Cool, thanks. Thank you guys. I think we are out of time. I would suggest we start taking questions. Shalini? Shivangi, sorry.
No worries. So I think the first question, though it doesn't flow from the discussion, but it's been asked by a lot of the participants, is that what happens to our traditional outdoor advertising, our outdoor platforms? What is the future for these? Any take on this? Because we do have a couple of startups in that area logged in as audience, and this is a concern area highlighted by them. Aditi, you're on mute.
Hi. I don't know if I'm the best person to answer this question, but you know, you can see all of the if you take like one drive around Mumbai, that's where I am. You can see all of the billboards being replaced with COVID messaging, right? And I think that's going to last for a while. So I do think that in general, advertising spends are just going to move to more measurable mediums, right? And of course, billboards are measurable to an extent with geo-targeting and stuff like that, but you are going to see with CPMs falling, etc., spends move towards performance marketing and towards content marketing on digital. So yes, that's definitely something that's going to happen.
Out of home, the biggest advantage that out of home offers is actually it's localized. In fact, I could say hyper localized in nature. And because of its nature of being hyper local, it can actually customize communication to a similar level to which digital can actually do, except that it can't be one-on-one personal, but at least to a large community of audiences residing in that particular area. So out-of-home could be classified into two segments, therefore. One on the street, and second on enclosed spaces. Like when I say enclosed spaces, it could be like airports, railway stations, buses, trains, etc., etc. Now, I think over in the space of time, the enclosed spaces will go more and more digital, which means the fact that I may be able to talk one-on-one on a personalized basis, or probably a smaller group of community within these enclosed spaces through out-of-home platforms. And on the streets, the discussion will be based, the messages will be based on the kind of platform you're using to do the communication. So for example, on buses, it could be saying the fact that the messages could be very customized to retail shops or retail outlets in that particular area. And as the bus's destination reached that area, the messages could actually flash out indicating the availability of products in that particular shop or the retail outlet. So it could become more and more customized nature. And it's not going to go away. Out of home is not going to go away or disappear from advertising menu level. But they will have to, as Aditi rightly pointed out, they will have to measure it well and show the ROI to advertisers of using that medium, and therefore bringing in efficiency and efficacy for that communication.
Thanks, LV. There's a follow-on question for you, Faye. So what is your opinion? Do you think that in the coming decade or so, all digital advertising methods would actually replace television advertising? What do you think the future is holds then for television advertising?
See, I think specifically to news, a lot of the patterns of consumption are going to change. We're seeing regional news on television continue to grow. Hindi and regional news continues to grow on television. English content on television is starting to wane because anyone basically who consumes English content is currently consuming a lot of digital content, and they find it more convenient. It suits their their needs and their lifestyles better. So earlier, for example, if you look specifically at English content, you would go, you'd want live sports, GEC, you want news, and these were the things that and movies. These were the things that you went to television for. Almost all of those things now have moved to digital. So I think that those patterns will change specifically. And I'm particularly seeing interest from brands on cause campaigns where they want to partner on specific causes. They want to partner on specific messaging, specific groups of people. As opposed to larger just brand campaigns, they want to be able to be identified with causes, be identified with with certain groups of people or with certain groups of audiences. So I believe that there will be a rise in that. Brands that will look for partners in causes, partners that will sort of take that messaging forward. like LB had said, in regional content, there's a rise both obviously in television and also in digital media, because you're able to, especially in COVID, we've seen that, you know, what's happening in your neighborhood, in your, you know, the surrounding areas, your city, what the rules are. That's the sort of content people are really looking for. Like, what's happening in Mumbai? Where can I go? Where can I not go? What's open? What's not open? What's a containment zone? What is not? And that again is going to drive some change. So brands that then are, you know, that want to be able to speak to smaller groups of people, I suppose, will find more avenues with content going forward as well. So I see that there will be very different behavior for regional, for Hindi, for English content, because the customers will start behaving, the content, you know, consumers will start behaving differently as well.
Okay. So in continuation of this, what do you think, this for the panel, would be the impact of the Reliance Facebook partner, the Jio Facebook partnership? What is your take on it? Do you think it would have an impact on last mile retail, on consumer behavior? How soon can we start seeing the impact of this?
I think we're going to start seeing the impact really, really quickly, right? Especially with WhatsApp. All right, with WhatsApp becoming, you know, I mean, with this move, we're going to see WhatsApp payment open up, right? Which was earlier, you know, had restrictions. I think we're going to see that open up. We're going to see the whole net neutrality discussion come back. You know, again, which had seen restrictions before. So the move to 1 billion people online is going, that exponential growth is definitely going to be fueled by this. And I think how businesses can leverage WhatsApp now is going to be an important part in their growth as well. So of course, as we know, WhatsApp has restricted, you know, business accounts for only, you know, pull versus push businesses, etc. So I think but with MSME payments and all that, that's going to majorly open up. So I think you will start seeing it very, very soon, maybe in the next couple of months.
I think one of the biggest changes that one is going to see from a behavior perspective from consumers is this queue system. When I say queue system, you know, when you go to a railway station today and the train approaches on the station, there's a rush of people going into the train or coming out of the train. Okay, it's a little unorganized in nature, but where I see the change in behavior now with the rules and regulation coming in post-COVID is the fact that the regulation of the queue. So even in digital, the slots are getting allocated to customers when they can get the product in, when they should, how long it's going to take in for the product to reach their destination. So there is a queue system that is actually getting created in every point action. I think that will get accentuated further. So which means the fact that behaviorally people will be able to demand for things well in advance, not at the last minute. That means that planning will come into play as a significant element in the lifestyle of individuals. Second, predisposition to product will actually happen, which means the fact that if I want to buy a toothpaste, and earlier the toothpaste purchase was more led by the fact that when the money comes into the pocket of the chief wage earner, which could probably be in the beginning of the first week of the month or the last week of the month, depending on the salary payouts and the money that he was getting from whatever work he was doing. Therefore, advertising is to skew close to the point of purchase. Now, the point of purchase, which is a shop, is no longer there. Actually, it's going to be e-com transaction. So at an e-com transaction level, how do I ensure the fact that at the time of making a transaction, my brand actually pops up, and at the same time, I'm there omnipresent in his mind, so that our top of mind presence is there, so that when he's taking a decision well in advance for planning his purchase cycles, my brand actually is part of his purchase category itself, purchase basket itself. So there is going to be a lot of reorientation of marketing principles in which communication is going to be a key element. And that element, which is being practiced today, is no longer viable to be practiced as we head into the new future in a digital world.
So in your opinion, in the panel's opinion, if we had to identify the 2 or 3 key pivots which maybe consumer businesses would have to shift their advertising to around to ensure that they reach their audience in the manner that they now need to reach out to, given that the traditional channels may not be available, what do you think would be the 3 key pivots for advertisers?
So yeah, I can address that, and I think uh, one is, of course, there is a short term uh, opportunity, and I think in the short term, I believe that there are two revenue sources which are emerging. One is the government itself is actually a big source of revenue, and if one can really position themselves to work towards meeting the demand for the PPEs and other things in the short term, and I think there would be alternative streams of revenues that they can generate. The second is, I think there's a lot of CSR capital which is also getting directed to helping solve short-term problems with respect to any social issues getting caused because of the situation. So I think while of course, there's an opportunity to really reposition yourself and rebuild your business model. I think in the short term, one needs to look at these potential revenue opportunities. For the longer term, I think there's an opportunity to really, even if your revenues may not be happening, I think one should continue to uh, engage with their customers. And one of the examples which I see is a travel company has been actually quite actively, engaging with their customers and telling them proactively, do not travel, stay at home. So I thought that was a very creative way of, staying engaged with their customers. So even if your own demand is not picking up, you need to find creative ways to stay engaged with your customers. And then eventually, I think you need to find out models which are targeted towards the emerging market segments. And I talked about vernacular earlier. That could be an opportunity. Look for opportunities to move into tier 2, tier 3 towns if you're not yet focused on those areas.
I think LV, I'll just quickly add there. I think LV made a great point that basically all of the sort of point of distribution, point of purchase kind of buying that used to happen is going to significantly reduce, right? So I think that's one segment that you got to look at very closely. And anybody who's in that segment will have to reinvent how he really kind of takes a space in the mind of the consumer so that he has to, like, now the consumer has to actively make a choice. Like, for example, buying chewing gum at the checkout aisle, right? I think you got to now actively kind of get into the mind of the consumer rather than being at the point of purchase. So I think that becomes like super key, right? I think in amongst sort of other things, uh, I think, see, the one thing of the internet is that it's the truest form of democracy. Right, and I think that you got to believe that the consumer is extremely demanding and he becomes like more demanding every day, and only the best wins, right? So like the best way for a small medium business to succeed is really be the best in what they do in a smaller pocket than necessarily trying to do everything, right? So I would and I think that's really because you can find a big consumer base on the internet very quickly, right? Like for a small product, one product company, like there are enough examples of one product companies who do multi-crore revenues on the internet, and the same company, I don't think in the physical world would have ever been able to kind of provide that kind of inventory into shops, right? So I think you're going to see heavily specialized companies who are able to then kind of excite their customers with that niche.
Thanks, Anubhav. I think the other aspect that we should probably touch upon is this whole glut of content. Whereas in a pre-COVID world, people had their defined choices. You knew whether you were a Netflix person or a Hotstar person. You knew what shows you wanted to follow. But this is a problem that I face in my house also, where I have somebody who comes and tells me, but I've watched everything that there is to watch. Now there's nothing to watch. So this over consumption of content seems to be a problem, a new problem. So what can OTT platforms do? Because they need to stand out, garner eyeballs, manage their cash flows. This seems to be a new nature of problem faced by media companies. So what are the steps that you suggest in terms of garnering an audience, retaining it, and also then the more important aspect of managing your cash flows, keeping the business going, getting in investments, getting in new users, the whole cycle of it?
Yeah, I can take that. So basically, I think one of the trends we're seeing is that a lot of the OTT platforms are actively asking for already created content, right? Which usually, I mean, they would acquire only really large titles, which are theatrical releases and stuff like that, or international titles, right? But now they're actually coming to people like us and saying, "Hey, do you have already created content that has you haven't put out, right? And how can we buy that?" So everyone's trying to increase their catalog. The other thing is, I think what they're doing is they're pushing the older content further. Like earlier also I said that people are going back to nostalgic content, and that's also why we are seeing the Ramayana, Mahabharat, sort of wave happening. So pushing older content as well, and not just newer titles onto people, marketing in different ways, etc. That's the other thing that they can do. And I think the third thing that they're doing is, so some areas are opening up. So some countries have opened up production, right? So for example, in Europe, there are countries like Iceland, for example, has opened up production. Karnataka as a state is actually opening up production on May 25th. That's the plan as of now. So they are actually repositioning a bunch of their content. So for example, there's something we're developing with Netflix where we're rewriting part of it to be in a different geography, so we can shoot quicker, right? So I think everyone's trying to be as nimble as possible and developing and greenlighting a lot during this time, so that when everything opens up, we can go shoot. One other trend we're seeing is even the larger platforms are now changing their inclination towards more indoor shoot content rather than outdoor, right? They would rather restrict travel. They would rather restrict like road permissions and stuff like that, and focus on content which is more being able to shot indoors. So these are some of the things that we are seeing that OTT platforms are doing. They're becoming flexible in terms of acquiring content as well, shorter stuff, OTT only movies, different genres. They're happy to take, for example, horror, even if earlier they didn't. So just to get, just to keep the catalog going.
No, it's adding on to Aditi. It's a very interesting question when you look at the future of OTT itself. Okay. If you look at today, the OTT consumption, bulk of it is happening on the smartphone consumption. Now, the difference between a smartphone and a television screen is the fact that the smartphone is a individual-led consumption, while the television is a consensual consumption where the entire family is actually watching the content. As things move forward, and television becomes also a primary screen to push through wireless broadband OTT content on a bigger screen for the entire family to watch. There were some recent experiments that were done, actually. Okay. Some of the television channels picked up OTT content and began to air that content on the television screen, and thinking the fact that probably it's worthwhile checking whether the entire family is ready to watch that or not. And the answer was no. So therefore, what is happening is, as we look into forward level, we may need to judge what kind of content the OTT platform wants to produce, and keep an eye on who that target segment is. If the target segment is moving towards a consensual viewing, family viewing kind of thing, then the present content definitely, not all, but some of the present content may not work at all actually in that kind of a scenario, future scenario. While on the other hand, if it's going to be a smartphone-led consumption, bulk of the video consumption in the future is going to be, then the kind of consumption, the type of content that is getting produced for OTT platforms are making good sense in nature. So as an investor, I'll take a call and say the fact that am I going to back this kind of content and therefore these kind of production companies that are putting OTT content in, or should I be looking at content houses who are actually producing TV content, and that's a content that may be appealing even in OTT later on in the future when a geo fiber or any other kind of fibers enter the home with broadband and putting OTT onto television screen at a very, very cheap price in nature. So that's the other angle to future of how content may come into play on screens.
Cool. Thank you, guys. I think we are almost out of time. Thanks to everybody for joining in. I think all the audiences, all the panelists. I'll just leave for Shivangi to close.
Sure. Thanks, Anubhav. If we could just have a quick closing comment from all the panelists, maybe 1 minute, 2 minutes, if you can take just to share your final thoughts with the audience, and we can close the session.
So if I may go first, so obviously, I mean, really interesting points of view. I think generally, I was taking down notes, but generally the point of view is that habits are going to change across the board, and how many of those habits will remain, and how as content producers, entrepreneurs, advertisers, investors, we're all going to have to sort of keep track of where this wave crashes and where it recedes, and what stays on the shore after that is done, and where the opportunities are. It's really interesting that obviously everyone is looking for opportunities right now. We're trying to stay connected with our audiences. We're trying to understand what the audiences, and personally for me, what I find interesting is I find that the audiences, sort of emotions are changing week on week. So week 1 of lockdown and week 4 and 5 of lockdown are very different. So they're responding to content differently. They want different content. They want different engagement. They're sort of swinging from being optimistic to being angry to being optimistic again, and somehow it's a different, as far as content producers, they're looking for different things at different times. Sometimes, like Evie pointed out, they're looking for mythology, they're looking for God, or otherwise they're looking for hard information, and we have to all find our way and find our space in that in that swinging pendulum. So it's going to be an interesting 1 year. I think it's going to be challenging, but it's going to be an interesting 1 year to be an entrepreneur, to put together sort of, it's going to be a year for frugality for all of us. I think frugal business is going to, be the theme, whichever sector you happen to be in.
I would just wish everybody the J curve that Vikram is predicting.
From my perspective, if you're in the 20s, from age bracket perspective, you could say you could have an euphoria, primarily because the fact that the world is changing, and you're just putting your footsteps into the world of working environment, and as new businesses emerge out, you're going to say, "Wow, this is a fantastic opportunity." If you're in the 30s, I could say, what has happened, but it's just a few steps that I've taken. So I'm going to re-engineer this, carve out, there's a right time to go become more entrepreneurial in nature. Age is on your plus side, as well as your new entrepreneurial skills may come into testing and do some amazing new stuff. If you're in the 40s, you'll say, oops, did I miss the bus in nature? Can I re-engineer myself, reskill myself, and look at the new world very, very fast? And if you're in the 50s, I wish the time could go back and say, I'm in the 20s. Let me be in the 20s, rekindle myself, and come back again with a regenerated world, actually. That's the perspective that I have.
I can go next. I think this is probably, I always look at it as an entrepreneur myself. And I think, as Krishnan said, I think this is probably the best time to be an entrepreneur and really capture the opportunity. And I think if you're an entrepreneur, of course, there are tough times, and if everybody could survive, then then what's the fun of it, right? I mean, so I think you need to really capture the opportunity and really move in that direction where be one of those unicorns capturing this opportunity. And this Jacob, I actually really believe in it, and I think you need to make the most out of it.
I agree with everything everyone said. I'll maybe talk about a slightly different point, which we haven't talked about in this panel today. I think if you're a business that is not in manufacturing or offline retail, etc., I think there is a humongous opportunity in these times to really increase productivity. We are seeing our team's alignment and productivity stronger than ever before. And that is something, honestly, we did not expect. We planned for very often communication, transparent communication, realigning the teams, helping even like the younger people. So the age of our company, average age is about 25. But even helping those people who have never seen a session in their professional lives to understand, to look at it from the company's perspective, and to be thankful that, we all have jobs, and we all have something to do to keep our mind off, this pandemic. So I think that realignment of teams, for example, we were using Slack already at work, which really benefited us during this time. Right. So this is a good time to increase productivity, really increase bonding in your team. Huge activities can be organized on Zoom. We do talent shows, we do stand-up nights, we do town halls more frequently than before. And actually that's really, really helped. The other thing, I would say is that while as entrepreneurs, this is one of the hardest times, but I also think that it's a good excuse to kind of step back a little bit as well, if that's something that, you can allow yourself to do, reconnect within the family, and just do mundane chores, which I think we never get to do as entrepreneurs, to just relax a little bit. So I think, it's easier said than done, but I'm personally trying to do it. And agree with Faye, the first week of lockdown, I needed a glass of whiskey like every evening. And it's it's different now, so I think we adapt as entrepreneurs. I think we have that, right? We're resilient, and I think we adapt faster than others. And so just focus internally and align your teams. I think that's half the battle won.
So I think, thank you, Aditi, on that positive note. Thank you, LV, Anubhav, Faye, Vikram, and the rest of my team and our members for participating in this session and making it what it is. I also thank our event partners, Ideal Insurance Brokers, and taxation partner, Tax Mantra Global. Our next sector in focus on MADB2, the industry edition, is supply chain, which is on the 18th of May at 11:30 IST. I look forward to seeing all of you there. Thank you. Thank you once again. Stay safe. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shivangi. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye.